6:38 p.m., December 2nd, 2021. This is a special meeting of the Guam PUC. And all commissioners are present this evening with the exception of Mr. Mike Pangolin. First order of business is call to order. And second is approval of minutes of October 28th, 2021.
Motion to approve subject to corrections.
Commissioners, actually, we don't have the minutes for this month. The transcripts were submitted, I think, only about 4 or 5 days ago, and Attorney Camacho is off island. So these will be done at the next regular meeting.
Okay. Next item is GPA docket 09, ratification order by Chairman Johnson suspending the effectiveness of GPA net metering program interconnection policy AP072. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Red?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. You are familiar with this matter because you were provided with copies of the preliminary order that Chairman issued on November 2nd. Now, what this involves is a net metering policy, the net metering program interconnection policy AP72. The policy including customer must include battery storage or an energy storage system in their net metering systems. Now, the issue was that in April of this year, in this docket, GPA 2009, the PUC had ordered that GPA could not implement this new net metering policy, either to implement a new rate, a rate for, instead of having the net metering. So the order essentially prohibited GPA at the present time, at least, from implementing that policy until it conducted various studies. And those studies were a distribution system impact study showing the impact of net metering on the system, and also an independent study in terms of grid and other services used by net metering customers, which identified in detail the value of those services to net metering customers. So basically the commission said that GPA, until you provide these studies, we will not review or approve have battery storage. So in the preliminary order that the chairman issued, and that was issued because there were 3 complaints about the new policy, indicating in each that the complainants felt the policy had not been approved by the PUC, and the chairman determined that he would issue a preliminary order preventing GPA from proceeding with that at the present time. The reason was that November 2nd, the commission wasn't meeting again until December 2nd. So I believe you're all, he basically found that the new policy violates the existing PUC order in this docket, that there are other requirements in law, the public law, just flat out states basically that it is the PUC that promulgates an implementation of a net metering policy without PUC approval would violate that law. And in addition, the original net metering policy that was implemented in 2009, that was approved by the commission. So there was a net metering policy that's pretty much been in effect. So PUC has to approve such rules, and any net metering policy must be approved by the commission. The chairman exercised his authority pursuant to 12 GCA 12105B to issue the order, and that was done with the confirmation and designation of each of you commissioners. So what this order before you now would do is to ratify and approve the chairman's preliminary order and adopt the order of your own. And again, it would set out the same path for proceeding in this docket, which is that the policy would be suspended pending review of the commission, and the PUC would conduct further proceedings in this docket and consider the complaints, as well as to give GPA an opportunity to either demonstrate that they've complied with the prior order or to argue why they believe this policy must be adopted now without compliance with those requirements. And finally, the order before you tonight would also order the ALJ to undertake and carry out further proceedings in the docket.
Thank you, Fred. John, do you have any comments regarding this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. First of all, I think the PUC know us well enough that we don't purposely try to violate any orders that we put together. And again, that's similar in this case. Let's go back to the promulgation of the net metering. Everything is new. Net metering is first time being implemented anyway. So therefore, yes, you have some rules that most especially, and again, the PUC, most especially concerned about the rates and those types of policies. So far, I could understand where GPA could have said, okay, here's including the technical aspects of the organization be included in that scenario. You know? So again, so that it's clear to everyone that, yeah, you're gonna have to do this, do that, and so on. So, but again, okay, 2009, fast forward to today. There are issues out there in the system, no? And yes, we owe you. We have to provide the PUC the studies, and that, of course, has been impacted by COVID and our consultants' availabilities due to all of this. So the latest word I have now is that we're looking at February, March to provide you the studies, including looking, because again, we have some very good data because we have the AMI metering system, so we can tell what's going on in the system. But again, it takes a lot of analysis, and that's being done today. But be it as it may, we also have regular reports every month on net metering. And if you look at that, there's two circuits that are already 75% of the minimum load. There's 40% of the circuits that are about 25% of the minimum load. There are unbalances in the system that are happening today. No? So again, that's the scenario as to what's also driving us to try and get a handle of this thing, because what happens there? It starts to degrade the motors and the pumps, and the motors and compressors and different things in the system. Because as a result of all of this happening, because again, most of the solar PV are single phase. So they come in on two legs of the three-leg system. So if too much are in certain leg of the system, feeding all that energy, so therefore your voltage imbalance is going to occur. Voltage imbalance ends up in your motors as heat, extra heat. Therefore, your life with the equipment starts to go down. So again, it's not an immediate scenario. How soon? I'm not quite sure. My colleague here from GWA is concerned about voltage imbalance. And in fact, just today we were giving them more information. You know? So again, yeah, it needs 1%. And there are some areas that jump up to 10% certain times of the day. Load in the daytime, they feed into the system. In the evening, they take from the system. So your system is kind of almost fixed coming in through a load back changer at the main transformer. So this is playing within the circuit now scenario. So again, even the original what you call it policy, how does any little change have to require PUC approval? You know, these are the technical aspects of the system is really our responsibility. You know, the quality of service to our customers is GPA's responsibility. So let me go back. Just a little bit. In the resolution of the CCU ban, there is said that we will require batteries. There is said, however, to make it easier for the rest of the customers, if they pay the fee, then we will work with that fee so that we can utilize and start putting in batteries in the system where appropriate. Because there is, and again, we'll be concluding this, just because what a person does with a new solar coming into the system with a battery is that it doesn't make the problem worse, but it doesn't mean it makes it better. So it's almost better to look for those culprits, or I won't want to say culprit, but I did, but look for those areas that could be improved, and that's where you put batteries. That's where perhaps, you talk about rebates for batteries. That's perhaps maybe GPA invests in those batteries. So that's the type of scenarios we're dealing today. So if I look at the record of the denial, we denied about the rate. And again, I didn't see, it's not clear to me that we denied about having batteries. First of all, we already owe the will have batteries in all utility scale because we see so again that what's unclear to me. No? So we are trying to work with that. We did mention batteries or some kind of control system to work with it. So again, perhaps we can work something out as to how we, like Fred mentioned, get together and figure out how maybe we can have something that would address both of our concerns and make that happen. But again, in no uncertain terms, it wasn't an arrogance or anything like that to not comply with the order. The order said the rate is denied. No, we didn't really specifically say we will not have any, past that. So that's all, Mr. Chair, and I don't want to make it any more than that. We work together to resolve this, but I do want to know that we have work to do. To make sure, because the way it works is here's 3 feet coming from the power plant. That's a big boy. They give you, so we try to load up people based on 2 lakes, residential, and balance it with some others on other lakes. But then all of a sudden we have these people all on this lake putting in supply. Then the voltage goes down on that lake, creates an unbalance. See? And so and then in the evening it becomes a load instead of a supply. So again, this is the growing pains moving forward with renewables. And as you will see in the integrated resource plan, we'll probably be looking for 300 megawatts more to get to 50% renewables. However, we're talking about perhaps another 200 million in investments, because you can't just have everybody doing their own thing. You have to try and find a way to control that. You have synchronous connect, all kinds of other stuff which the IRP has identified. So that's kind of where we are, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. So these 2 studies on distribution system impact study, that Landis and Gare is doing that one. And when will that one be ready?
Yeah, we're looking now. John is really pushing them, and so they told me January, but I'm saying February, March. And again, they're looking at one particular substation. They're trying to do 6. They'll finish 6, but then eventually we're gonna have to do all. But the 6 are in the major load centers like Dededo, that has so many circuits over there. Because again, that has an impact transfer, and what they're concluding, and again, some initial preview, is that 30% of the minimum load seems to be already the top end of the solar direct feed into the system. No? So like I mentioned earlier, over 40% are already about 25%. I venture about 30% of them are above, 30% loading. And 2 are at 75 already. So that's the things we're trying to test. So we'll have that, I believe by February, March, Mr. Chair. And again, what happens also again is that any benefit becomes a cost. There's a turning of the curve. After you get beyond like a 30%, from what I'm understanding now, then there's costs related. You have to put in batteries, you have to put in other upgraded systems, you have to do different things. So then it becomes a cost. No?
When you're saying 30%, John, you mean 30% of the load in a specific area? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, for that feeder, 30% of the minimum load. Because it has a high load in the daytime or evening when everyone, but 30% of the minimum. Yeah. So they could have tied it to the high, but industry is tied to the minimum load.
Okay.
So if the capacity or all of that are wrong, then you're going to get, that's the optimum scenario. And again, in January, the drafts of the IRP will be, I'll be asking the CCU to approve the IRP, and that will be full share. So we're just going through the drafts now, trying to finalize them. But I did have a presentation, the last meeting.
Presentation on the IRP.
Yeah, just the high points, including the 300 megawatts I mentioned. 300 more megawatts to get 50% by December 29, 2029.
And then the other study by Utility Financial Service on the cost of grid services used by net metering customers, that'll be done about the same time frame?
Yep. In fact, that is mostly completed. It's the land is here, and then he takes that and see what other additional scenario he learns from it. So he has done a lot of work on UFS is really standing by for Landis here. Landis here is doing it for us because again they're the ones that provide the meter, and they have an engineering firm that's looking at all of these types. So they're John's consultant.
Any of the other commissioners have questions? Paper?
Yes, it's an old bar guy. I'd like to get involved with the data. So that I have a good understanding of what's circulated versus that. Maybe some adjustment, CAP project here and there, or something. Just for me to understand how the circuit and how the impact is. Because this is only a couple hours in a day, right? It's only when the net metering customers are activating solar that this thing starts to move. But it's only 13 hours in a day. It's only like 6 hours in a day. So that's the thing you have to concentrate on.
You're correct. You put in the certain hours a day. You have a certain
Right.
in the evening, you have a certain balance also.
Yes.
But the two is not necessarily the same because the dead to 100
If you can understand
a balance that you can do. So yeah, we will. And of course we
Just call me up, Fred. Or
Maybe you can give us a little insert at some point in time down the road once it starts tearing down.
This is one issue from Ed Rowe. I have the I really would like to have a better, because I've actually had difficulty really understanding and also understanding because GPA doesn't seem to be as supportive is the reading, the feeling I'm getting. And I kind of want to understand why, and then the other side of the equation, why wants everybody to invest in renewables, and yet I see a certain amount of resistance. I feel it, hear it, see it on the part of GPA, and I want to try to understand why it is. So it's still an issue that I'm just kind of like clear as mud.
I think these studies will probably help shed a lot of light, and also when John brings the IRP forward and looks at the whole entire system together, a lot of things will probably become a little bit more clear. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay.
Motion to ratify.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item is GPA docket 2202. Petition for approval of procurement of the performance management contract for the management, operation, and maintenance of the GPA fuel farm bulk storage facility. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. The present PMC for the fuel farm bulk storage facilities, IP&E Guam, and the PUC approved that performance management contract in August 31, 2017. It provided a basic 2-year term and then three one-year extensions, so a total of 5 years. In other words, the present contract will expire on September 30, 2022. GPA is coming to the PUC early so they can get a procurement out and take care of all the process before the contract expires in September 2022. In the current petition, they're only asking for procurement authority. That's really the only issue before you this evening on this matter. After the procurement is completed, then GPA anticipates that the new PMC would commence a 3-year base period contract, which would be October 1, 2022 through September 30, 2025, and then 2 additional 1-year contract extension terms, which would require the mutual consent of the parties. So theoretically, if this procurement is done, a contractor is selected, the procurement could last until September 30, 2027. The request of GPA is well supported, as they would always do in this procurement instance, is provide us with procurement documents, and they've provided 4 volumes of the procurement, the IFB, and that includes commercial terms and conditions, technical and functional requirements, facility technical description, and the actual performance management contract. The procurement documents really do set forth a detailed description of the fuel farm facility, the technical requirements for the bid, the duties of the performance management contractor. And I have attached a portion of the contract, section 9, which really in detail goes through all the different duties. And I won't cover them now in detail, but basically it's complete management and operation of the fuel farm facility. It's responsibilities for receiving the fuel from the docks, transmitting it to the GPA tanks, 1934 and 1935, transmitting the fuel to the plants such as Cabris and NEC 8, 9. There are fuel spill obligations that the contractor must undertake. It's really a far-reaching to the leakage tanks, and then also that the fuel is then transmitted so that the cappers plants in Deck 8 and 9 can run. So, without that facility, I think GPA would be in big trouble probably. So that it really occurred this time. I'm pretty careful. The CCU did approve this 20 years and then up to 2 additional 1-year terms. With the documents, as I indicated, they submitted a contract, a complete form contract that the selected bidder will have to sign. And as I indicated, the contract does extensively describe the duties and responsibilities of the contractor. It includes various provisions designed to protect the ratepayers and GPA. That includes warranty provisions, provisions where the contractor has to remedy defective work, termination for convenience by GPA, insurance requirements in case an accident occurs, for example, and indemnity provisions where GPA is indemnified. The PUC has previously found that this fuel bulk storage facility and the PMC, they should be adequate to require proper performance by the contractor, and that the PMC for the facility is reasonable, prudent, and necessary. Basically, GPA has used the same form of contract since at least 2012, and this contract has been before you commissioners a number of times previously. Looking at the expenditures is kind of interesting. I did attach some documents that show those. If you look at the cost for the PMC, for the storage facility going back to the 90s, in the 90s at one point it was about $600,000 per year, and that cost from that time up until the most recent fiscal year, this fiscal year that we're in now, for 2022, now this is projected cost, is over $917,000. So the cost has gone up quite a bit. I did note that cost, and in some years the actual expenditures are less than were expected. But in any event, GPA doesn't really have a choice now. They have to go out for a new contract because the present contract will expire. And I think also they're trying to get a good gauge of what will the market bear and what will the contractors be able to offer in terms of pricing. So I've recommended that the PUC approve the petition. Cost, of course, is unknown at the present time, and is always the case. Once the procurement is completed, GPA will come back to the PUC for approval of the final PMC contract once the cost is known. I've submitted a proposed order for your signatures, and that embodies the
Any comments on this?
For getting the award. Secondly, really go in that it has to be well run mistakes. You cannot have 200,000 barrels. 200,000 barrels times 40 times 10. Over 10 million gallons running around at the harbor. And then this team has to be tie-in for oil spill control. So it's really a comprehensive and inclusive project. And I won't go back to having to run that facility ourselves. Too many things could go wrong.
Thank you, John. And the summation you gave us on changing fuels over the next few years, that was really good. Again,
That's right. This team is the one who's gonna work us through that, the next, that's why you see a 3-year
Yep.
and then 2 optional year, because we don't wanna change horses in between, the process.
John, is that the reason why, FY 22 is jumping by 117,000?
Which one, the
Estimated cost of
projected
it?
cost?
Because of the new field changes, or because in 2022, that was kind of the beginning of it?
Some of it, sometimes
Or is that
includes,
just-
capital investment required for the facility. I'm not quite sure, but sometimes that's.
Whatever that estimate was.
But
And
we
second-
require them to make that investment in the system.
Right. And then second, I just want to commend you for letting us know, not last minute, like we have to extend a contract, and you're actually going out to bid on this, and anticipating that it is gonna go up, and actually looking at it again, so thank you for that, John.
Any other questions?
John, are you expecting it to be competitive bids to come in? Are you just?
If I have 2 or 3, that's great. If I only have 1 and they're qualified and do that, then I'm thankful. That's it.
So you
But
do
there's
not-
never really been more than 2 or 3 in the past. Most of the time it's been associated with one of the
Field contracts.
fuel department. And why is that? Because they have the setup for the spill prevention, all of this different thing, and it's something that they do all the time. No? And
You like
stuff.
to like Shell and Mobile?
Yeah, like this one, I believe the third contract is IP&E.
This one's Shell,
Yeah.
IPD,
Yeah.
IIT. Did Mobile ever bid on this?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. But I think IP&E, and then we had another group before that, but I can't remember who they were. Yeah, and they were contractors for I think quite a few years.
It's extended the full term, right, all the options.
But they had that experience, and they were able to get the oil spill, were required by law or by the EPA to have those, what we call it, contingencies available at any time in place, because that's a lot of oil right there.
So regardless, this is the end of the term, right? This is the last extension. There is no other extensions in this particular contract.
No more extensions. Not this contract.
So it has to go there.
Anything else? Is there a motion? Pedro makes a motion, second?
Second.
Peter seconds, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Next item is GPA docket 2203, GPA's filing for fiscal year 21, approved contracts and obligations. This is for informational purposes only. Fred, any comments on that?
No, it just gives basically the contract review matters that GPA brought before the PUC. And it's interesting, I think, to review all the fuel purchases and the different fuel contracts. But it's just for information.
Okay. Any questions from any other commissioners?
This is information pertaining to what we just, the second order, this is part of the thing, the field contracts. And that's it.
Thanks, GPA.
Thank you.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
See you next year.
Next item is GWA docket 2203, petition to approve contract amendments with Selenius, Camacho and Associates to complete phase 3 tank inspection and repairs, district metering and pressure zone realignment, deep wells GAC system installation and rehabilitation, and water line replacements. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Joe Fett, this one's you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this petition concerns GWA's June 17, 2019 indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract with Duenas, Camacho and Associates for project and construction management services. This contract involved task orders related to the construction management for tank repairs, construction management for the water line replacement projects in Barrigada, and project and construction management services for the rehabilitation of the water treatment plant. This contract was subsequently amended this July to include additional task orders related to the management of the Chico Sewer Pump Station flood mitigation and facility rehabilitation construction projects. And just in October, the CCU approved an additional $2 million of funding for this contract. And GWA, according to GWA, they submit that the additional funding of $2 million will allow it to issue additional task orders related to the following projects: project and construction management for phase 3 tank inspection and repairs, project and construction management of district metered areas and pressure zone realignment, construction management of deep wells A23 and A25, GAC filter system installation, construction management for the rehabilitation of groundwater wells A-02, A-12, D-05, and F-03, as well as construction management for the water line replacement construction project. GWA also added a contingency of $150,000 to be budgeted as part of the $2 million requested. With respect to the phase 3 tank inspection and repairs, GWA estimates the cost of this task order at around $600,000. And for the district metering area and pressure zone realignment project, about $200,000. For the deep well GAC system installation project, about another $200,000. And for the rehabilitation project for the groundwater wells, $640,260. And finally, another $200,000 for the water line replacement construction project. They submit that the funding for this contract will be paid for by GWA's bond funds. And according to the CCU, which approved this authorization, they indicated that the projects will allow GWA to continue to make improvements to the water system, which will improve water supply, reduce water loss, create pressure zones, repair, maintain water storage reservoirs, and install new water lines. The CCU also indicated that the projects are completely in line with its 5-year capital improvement program that addresses the 2011 federal court order, EPA compliance issues, as well as other regulatory priorities. As this commission is aware, there is still a lot of work to be done to increase water supply, reduce water loss, and improve the water system infrastructure. And so I believe that the projects managed under the Duenas, Camacho and Associates contract will bring GWA closer to these objectives. Also, this commission has been consistently concerned with GWA's water loss management, and I believe that the launch of the district metered areas and pressure zone realignment projects, as well as the continuation of the water line replacement project, would help stem these water losses that PC is so concerned with. The implementation of the district metered areas will also help GWA focus its repair efforts to further reduce these water losses. In addition, the installation of the GAC filtration system will allow deep wells A-23 and A-25 to be usable, because if I understand it correctly, and GWA can correct me if I'm wrong, those 2 deep wells are currently not in use.
That's correct.
And so, Mr. Chair, based on this record, I recommended that the PUC authorize an amount of $1,681,058, which is a little less than what GWA requested, because of course we didn't allow for the $150,000 contingency, because the contract review protocol allows for the 20% contingency on top of the authorized amount. And also, GWA submitted based on an overview of their budget that the total amount, the total amount of cost appeared to be about 1.8 million. And so we just subtracted the 150,000.
Thanks, Joe. Miguel, any comments regarding this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, wanted to point out that this is also in line with the Commission's previous, order to GWA to, eliminate the PMO contract and to, spread the, similar services around to local consultants. These IDIQ contracts were the contract vehicle that GWA used to replace the PMO, so the task order basis allows us the flexibility to use different funding sources, different projects, and different contractors. So we're, the concept of the contract itself was also compliant with the PUC's prior, order to us.
Thanks, Miguel. Is it just those two wells right now that have a PFAS problem?
It's just those two that are currently inoperable because of the PFAS problem. We have other wells that were impacted, the one up at the airport, NES1, but it has an operating treatment system in place. So these two wells did not have 823 and 825, which are close to the Agani Shopping Center. They do not have a treatment system, so it's taken us a while to acquire property necessary to put a treatment system in, because as you know, those two wells are very close to the roadway and there's not a lot of space. And then also to complete the design of a permanent treatment system.
Are you noticing any creeping of the PFAS contaminated areas in other neighboring wells at all at this point in time?
No, not from what we suspect this source to be. Not to say that it's not happening. I don't think we have anything, any clear or firm evidence that that's the case. We have tried to be as supportive as possible to Weary at the University of Guam, who has conducted some studies on pavement transport of the PFAS contaminants in relation to rainfall. So we're not currently using the wells, but we have been running them and providing samples to Weary so that they can complete their study. We've also run down our own information on what the potential sources could be. Uncovered documentation that we've provided both Guam EPA and US EPA to try and get some movement on removing the source of that contamination, which we think we know, but we don't have the authority or the responsibility to do that ourselves. We can only treat what's in the water. We can't go get to the source if it's on private property. So we're trying to be as supportive as we can to try and prevent that type of migration that you're inquiring about from happening.
Do the military bases have any issue with PFAS at all, their water system?
Naval Hospital, apparently, one of the wells there has recently, it's been detected, so they're having issues there. I don't know of any other problem areas for the military.
Anderson has their own well.
They do, but I don't know if they have detected it or have any issues with it.
And Fenna and Ugam, no problem with their own surface water.
I can't speak for Fenna, but I know for Ugam there's none, and I don't think there's any I don't think there's any in Fenna either, based on the unregulated contaminant monitoring rural sampling that was done in 2017, I think. It didn't come up for Ugam, or for Fenna.
We monitor what comes out of Fenna, don't we, for what we use? EPA, Guam EPA and US EPA monitor what comes out of Fenna. But we don't do any separate sampling for production sources. We do sampling in our distribution system. So we monitor what goes into our distribution system. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the company's name on the PMO?
Of the PMO, that was Brown and Caldwell.
I got another one. This wells, the 825, 823,
Yes, sir.
824, and all that. Maybe we should look at another angle instead of trying to be rehabilitate that back on the service? Do we really need it? Does the system really need it when you have 20 wells not in service? Or could be in service? You know, you're only using 90 out of 120. So just take a look at it. But we just got to want to spend money on this or not. It doesn't affect anything because it's not on.
It does affect our ability to keep all the wells pumping at the appropriate levels.
I understand.
It places more of a demand on other wells, and we probably could reduce some of the pumping, but it also requires us to send more water from the north down towards the Gander instead of utilizing those two wells.
I understand.
We've had to make adjustments.
But maybe we really look at it because it's been years.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ellis, could there be an issue too if you're not using a well that's over an area that might have PFAS and you let it sit, that the dilution could pass to other areas laterally if you're not pulling water up from that zone?
That is an issue. So as a very concrete example of that, the airport wells that were put in were specifically put in so that the airport could pump the water and keep the contaminants that were at the former NAS in that area, and eventually it got all cleaned up. The contaminants that they started running their treatment system for, which was PCE and TCE, that's all gone, and it's not detected anymore in any of the wells there. So doing the same thing here and running 823 and 825 can contribute to cleaning up the PFAS that's there, but in addition to that, that can't be the only way that we address it. At least that's my perspective, because that just puts all the burden on GWA, and it doesn't remove the source. And so I think there needs to be a combined approach where Guam EPA is looking for the source and getting it out of there. So
Has PFAS been banned now?
it has been for manufacturing in terms of use of, it's the primary source of contamination for NAS and 823 and 825 was air fire
retardants.
the AFFF foam that they use for aircraft fires, right? That has, I think within the military, it's PFAS containing foams have been banned, and now they're moving towards alternative substances. Whether or not those alternative substances have chemicals that would also be of concern, I don't think that's been established yet.
It's in Scotch Guard too.
Right.
Vortex, White Right. You got a comment?
Yeah, the federal government is going into this climate change and infrastructure funds and all that. Lead, water and lead and all that. So maybe this might be a candidate for federal funding.
I think the federal infrastructure bill that was passed includes some funding to address
That's what I mean.
PFAS in water systems. I don't know if we're getting any. at this
Yeah,
point.
but it could be an input.
Yeah.
We'll find out soon.
Yeah.
Morrison.
I know in an IDIQ, indefinite quantity, indefinite amount. What bothers me is, and if I'm reading this correctly, and Joseph, correct me if I'm wrong. The first amendment increased the contract from 750 to 846,000. Then back in October, because I remember this, and this is the one where I spoke out of turn on something else, and then held your on. And that was a $2 million amendment, okay? Now we have a $1.6 million amendment? Is that correct?
No, so it's, 2 million of, GWA is requesting 2 million of, the $846,164, which is the current value of the contract.
The current value of the contract is,
$846,164.
Yes.
and this, we want to increase this to,
By 2 million.
which is almost triple the amount of the original contract, and that's what bothers me. Is this a backdoor way to, avoid the procurement? The change order is bigger than the original contract. usually in IDIQ, you do ask for maybe 25 to 30, 40% contingency. This is 200, almost 300% over the original amount. And that's the part that bothers me. Are we so way off in the planning, that we have to triple the amount or double the amount, 846 to 2 million? That's 1.2 million over the original amount the original amount was 750,000. And now we want to increase this to 2 million. So that's almost 3 times the original amount. That's the part that bothers me. This is not a change order. This is a brand new contract, because we only approved 750,000 to begin with.
Yeah, they're adding several additional task orders.
And that's my point. Why are they now adding it as opposed to going out on a new contract?
So the initial IDIQ contracts that were issued, there were multiple IDIQ contracts that were issued in several different categories of services. This one was for PMCM, Project Management Construction Manager. At the time the initial contracts were issued, because we had not previously issued any of these types of contracts, we didn't have a firm grasp of how much we might need. And
Well,
we
you
issued.
certainly don't.
We issued multiple contracts, and we have one of the contracts, we could not get agreement with the contractor on any of the task orders because we felt it was just too high. And so they haven't been awarded anything near the full amount of the contract, but they were estimates when we started. And the other thing is we weren't sure how much we would need annually. As it turns out, now that we have a year and a half under our belt, we've exhausted the initial contract amount, but because of the upcoming project workload and the validity of the contract for an additional 3-year period, we've estimated what we think we can use this contractor for, because they've provided good services at reasonable rates, and that's why we're requesting the additional funding.
So what, in your guesstimate, because I understand there's always so many what in your guesstimate is this IDIQ going to cost at the end of the day when you finish, or are you going to continue to add task orders? So this IDIQ goes on indefinitely for an indefinite amount?
Well, the indefinite delivery and indefinite quantity are features of the contract vehicle that allow us to execute task orders as they're needed. The limitations as we see them on the contract, in addition to the funding amount, is the length of time the contract was intended to be in effect. We don't intend to extend the contract beyond the valid contract period, and so I don't see us going much beyond what we're asking for right now with this contract. We'll put out another IDIQ.
Which is how much?
Well, when we do put it out again.
No, on this contract.
With the
You said
additional.
you don't, because right now it's all the amendments. I don't know what the final number is.
Well, what we've asked for is an additional $2 million to take this contract out to the end of its term.
And the base contract was only 750,000.
The base contract was an estimated $750,000.
And now we want to increase it to 2 million.
No, Joe Fed is recommending 1.68.
So we're gonna double it instead of triple it. Is that right?
But 1.68 because of the 20%.
Right. They always ask for the contingency, but the contingency is automatic, so we always take it away.
So on a going forward basis, and okay, what I heard you say is this is also your first IDIQ, and this is a learning process also.
That's correct.
So
Going forward,
after the end of this contract, which is gonna be a total of how much altogether with everything? What's the final number?
2,750,000,
Huh?
or is it 2 million total?
Yeah, is it two?
it's 840,000 plus the 1.68 that's being requested.
840 plus 1.6.
So that's 2.4 over the original contract of 750.
Right.
2.4 over the, okay, so from that learning experience.
750
No,
included
no.
2.4.
No, the original contract is 750.
Right,
Yeah, it went to
And it
846.
went
So,
up
but
to
it was
2.4.
Yeah, so it's 846 plus
Yeah.
1.66.
Which is
It's
2.4,
2.4.
which includes the original 750.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yeah,
it's not
so
two.
it's 750 and we triple.
We'll give another 750.
Yeah, yeah. It's not another 750, we're just, it's the, including the original 750. So it's
Yeah,
only.
no, but 750 times
1.6
3
of it.
is 2.2 and the contract is 2.4.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is, all the change orders are 3 times the original cost,
Yep.
correct?
Right, yep.
So, my next question is, after this very expensive learning experience, what do you quote guesstimate your IDIQ, your next IDIQ to run?
If it was for similar type services, ma'am, I would guess that it would run us about 3 million.
So you would come in with a 3 million.
Procurement
IDIQ.
upfront.
Yeah, you know. So, all right.
I think I just want to point out one of these projects here is, project and construction management of district metered areas and pressure zone realignment. That's something we've been pushing for a long time because that's directly linked to trying to get a handle on data related to water losses. And it's
I'm not
important thing to do.
I'm not questioning the projects. What I'm questioning is, we started with a contract of 750,000. And right now, we're looking at a contract, we're approving 1.6, which is more than double the original contract. That's really where I'm coming from.
Which was stated that it was an expensive learning curve, so.
Yes, yeah.
So it's just, it's the first time.
I never hear of amendments costing more than the original contract. Okay, that's a drive home. Yes, all these are needed, but, are we gonna be, pardon the expression, lowballed again? And then we have to triple the amount, that's the part, then that becomes,
Is there any kind of contingency on, like, existing contracts that allow that put a cap on how high they can go? Not just
the DOA. Our maximum is $1 million. That's all our budget. So.
yeah, but with all the for Miguel, and like they would have anticipated 3 million now, basically, because they
Well,
have
that's
a year and a
what-
half under their belt now, they know what it's gonna take now, right? So, at least, it's not cutting out, it's just one budget.
Bond is we pay for it. We pay for
Yeah,
it.
but
We the ratepayers pay
But
for it.
we pulled that bond money out in order to do these projects,
That's correct.
so, which was already a while back. So, moving forward, I guess, we just, maybe, is there a way to have it, like, come forward and ask for that, the amount? Unless you just think it's just too high to come. It's vice versa, right?
Believe me, I
It's too
would
high to
rather-
ask for, or it's too little, and then it's
I
surprising.
would rather only have to come to you once to
Right.
get these types of contracts approved.
Exactly.
But the truth of the matter is that when we had to come up with alternatives to the PMO, these IDIQ contracts were what we came up with in order to meet your intent, but we didn't have enough experience
Right.
executing them to know how much it would cost us. So the initial contract funding amount, quite frankly, it tied to the limit of my procurement authority, so that we could get them started.
Right.
Now that we have them under our belt, we have to come back to you because these amounts now go beyond the limit of my procurement authority. But
Right.
if I had, $1.5 million in procurement authority, would I have used that amount as the estimated amount for the initial IDIQ? Yeah, I would have, but that's.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, Miguel, I disagree with that line of thinking. You should have gone out, done your study to say, even if it exceeds my procurement authority, we need a contract of $2 million. period, end of story. Not because 750 is my maximum, therefore that's all I'm gonna go out for, that way I avoid all conversation with PUC. I'm sorry, but I disagree with that.
It wasn't the intent to avoid a conversation with PUC, it was the intent to facilitate the contract vehicle, which we did not have, in order to terminate the PMC, or the PMO. So, we weren't trying to avoid coming before the PUC, we
Well,
were
the
just
way
trying
you stated it, it certainly sounded like it.
But that wasn't his intention.
Yeah.
It was basically to get the ball rolling so that they can get rid of the, as we expected them to pass, to get rid of the PMO.
Who's the piano? See, I didn't.
Brown and Caldwell.
Which was another increase, so we had to like try to take that away and have them give that money locally. Instead of, try to find a way to source it locally, which they did.
It's been part of a long process.
Once again, I'm a new kid in the block, I don't have that perspective, sorry. But again, fundamentally, I just, 750 to 2.4, that's where fundamentally, my brain can't.
You'll see a bit more of that.
Not my brain,
This will
my
be the- this will be
procurement
the first or the
knowledge, my
last.
procurement knowledge can't accept it.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Miguel, with current conflicts or previous contracts, have you, although you've negotiated a cost, because I'm reading this as estimates, has GWA been able to save money on certain contracts with what you had budgeted, instead of, spending all the resource that you had identified to support it? That's what I'm just wondering if there's been cost savings on GWA's part, with managing, even with Camacho and Associates, the company here. Have there been any contracts that you've worked on now that you've had cost savings where the actual cost was less than what you had?
So, in terms of consulting services, there are some firms that the negotiated contracted amounts are sometimes less than our estimates. DCA is one of those contractors. There are other consultants where the prices that they give us are higher than our estimates. I mentioned an example of another IDIQ where we maybe issued one task order, because every time we ask them for a price proposal, it's exorbitantly high, and when we try to negotiate the cost down, they can't meet our expectation, so we don't issue the task order, we find another contract vehicle. So we're applying the contracts judiciously. In terms of overall capital improvement projects, are we able to execute projects where we save money? Absolutely. The Interceptor Project, the rehabilitation of the Interceptor from Anderson to the Northern District Treatment Plant. The estimates on that project were $30 million. We brought it in at $25 million and several months ahead of schedule. So we are doing our best to try, and we do have success stories like that of projects where we managed to save money. Unfortunately, the trend currently, just with construction in general, given the nature of the buildup, the costs are increasing, and so the estimates that we might have made 4 years ago on our 5-year CIP, we may not be able to get everything we need for the amount of money that we have budgeted, which is why most of our contracts now, we try to be as resourceful as possible in trying to structure the bid so that we have a base bid and then additive bids, so that based on the budget, we get as much done as we can. So we may want to replace 8,000 feet of pipe, but based on the pricing that's available through a competitive bid, we may only be able to do 6,000 feet of pipe. So the trend is just that costs are going up, and it probably will not change until there are more contractors or less construction work, and more contractors want to compete for our projects.
Yeah, I mean, just as a comment, I've seen that personally. We had a quote just to do some extent renovations kind of thing in the US, and it was like 100,000, and then it came out to 200,000 once we got to build. And I'm like, why did it double? was just during that COVID time, the shutdown part, and they couldn't, it was the workforce, and then the supply chain issues. They couldn't get the materials, it was the work materials that got so expensive, and then with the China stuff that was going on, all the prices went up. So, I mean, I understand your situation, so, and I feel for you.
So even in this contract, because we see the estimates, you have an estimate 600,000, there is a probability it could be less than that.
There is.
Because you're just estimating.
Right.
So the approval is, would you approve this amount, because this is what we're estimating, in hopes that, you know, you can have more cost savings, and if you've had that relationship already with the company you're dealing with, you know, hopefully you can get some cost savings there.
Yes, ma'am.
Could I ask, maybe at the conclusion of this contract, kind of get a lessons learned and what, and, you know, like, these were the original costs, this is what it, you know, just to see that progression, you know, of what, how it came from 750 to 2.4.
Miguel, you could probably pretty easily put together a synopsis of the years past on the Brown and Caldwell, contracts that were done over.
I think
That was quite a lot.
yeah, I think I may have,
Okay.
so I probably have some of that there.
I mean, you would be able to show the cost savings of what you've been able to do under in your tenure versus what you stepped into when you took over DWA.
Well, I hope it shows that.
I also did.
Well, we know what cost savings.
Yeah,
I don't foresee any.
5 million, you know, in that last
Inflation.
contract, yeah.
We allowed,
It's inflation.
we allowed for the PMO, GWA for quite a number of years because we felt it was necessary, and it was pretty pricey. And we, disallowed PMO for GPA at a very early stage and did not allow that to go forward. So that was quite a lot of savings from what that might have been on the GPA side. And it's worked out with both, actually. And now we've transitioned where GWA is moved beyond the PMO. That's where we're at now. Any other, comments?
Again, to go over the increase in this contract, it's not only increasing costs, it's increase in task orders on the contract.
Yes.
right, this is additional task orders.
Yeah. Everybody understands that, right?
Yeah,
Pedro, you
that's what I said, the indefinite quantity continued to increase indefinitely and the amounts continued, because the work, yeah, that one I did see.
Right,
Yeah.
more stuff's getting done.
Yes, yeah, but again, you know, going from 750 to 2.4 is hard for me to.
Right.
Anything else, Joe? Everybody's good now? Is there a motion? Who's second?
Joe.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Pedro, are you aye or opposed?
Thank you, I think, it's kind of like that, if you do, damn if you
Well,
don't.
the projects are necessary.
You increase the amount, you increase the work, but, you know, the limit is 750.
You can abstain too. You can abstain or vote aye or vote nay. You have three choices. Nay. Doris? Aye. Are you sure?
No.
But they're needed.
But they need it.
Okay, the motion passes 5-1. Pedro was a nay. Next item is GWA docket 2204, petition to approve contract change order number 2 with Giant Construction Corp. for the Tying Road S13 and Kenyatta Toto Loop Lot Street Water Line Replacement Project. Well, that's a mouthful. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Fred, you got this one?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. To begin with, this contract's a little different than the previous one. The real matter
I hope
before
so.
you, the real matter before you is a change order in the amount of $558,135. You already approved the original contract, up to an amount of $2,140,292,000. in April of this year. But to give you the background, on April 29th, the PUC approved this Tie Road S13 and Kenyatta Total Loop Gloss Street waterline replacement contract with Giant Construction Corporation. The PUC determined at that time that the project was necessary to address the increasing frequency of water outages in the Kenyatta Total Loop area. The project addresses breaks along the Tie Road S13 and Kenyatta Total Loop Gloss Street. The existing meters are being disconnected from an existing 6-inch asbestos cement pipe and then reconnected to the existing 12-inch PVC water line. So that was already approved by the PUC in April, up to an amount of, as I said, about 2.14 plus million. So since that time, since the PUC approved the original contract, there have been two changes. One was about 16 plus thousand for architectural study, or I'm sorry, archaeological study of the area, and that was also given to Duenas Camacho. That didn't need further approval by the PUC because it was within the contingency amount. But this change order that's now before you, that's change order number 2. And what it's going to do is upgrade existing small diameter galvanized service laterals currently connected to the old 6-inch ACP line, serving several homes along Tyson Road with a large 6-inch main to improve service levels. And that's the 558,000. Now, it appears that Tyson Road, which is a branch road of Kenyatta Loop, was not included in the original contract.
Right.
So that road, I'm sure GWA will have better figures than I, but just looking at the map they provided, it seems like there are over 20 residences on that road. And the meters for many of those houses are now at Kenyatta Loop. The meters are actually physically placed there. So I believe what they want to do is move the meters to the homes on Tyson Road. Now, you know, the question comes up, well, is this a legitimate part of the contract? And I really conclude that it is, because the original intent of this contract was to address the water breaks along Kenyatta Total Loop. And it's true, for whatever reason, Tyson Road was not included. But it should be included because it's connected to the Kenyatta Total Loop Road. As I said, it's a branch of that road. And the whole purpose is to prevent these water leaks that are plaguing this entire area. When GWA first came to the PUC with this project, at that time, Mr. Kelly Clark, had indicated that it's really kind of an emergency situation. These water leaks have been occurring over and over again, and all the residents in this area are not getting appropriate water service. So this change order number 2 would also replace the existing 1 to 1 1/4 inch galvanized pipe along Tyson Road, as I said, with the new 6-inch diameter PVC pipes. There's also some installing fire hydrants involved in this, and relocating, as I mentioned, the existing service water meters from the entrance of Tyson Road to the front of each house. So, in my mind, I thought, well, yeah, there's always the question, should there be a new contract? This is an amendment of an existing contract, but as far as I know, the amendment is within the original scope of the project. GWA did submit this change order number 2 to Duenas Camacho and Associates again, its consultant. That was mentioned, this is one of the projects that Joe Fett's report had mentioned, the water line replacement. DCA also indicated that the project was appropriate and consistent with the original scope of the project. So in my mind, It's definitely related. The people of Tyson Road need their water service to work, and as the others connected into Kenyatta Total Loop. So I have no problem in concluding that it is related to the original contract, and it does fall within the scope. TWA has indicated that these serious water and pressure issues have caused problems to the customers of Tyson Road. And of course, before in its original order, the PUC found that these water issues should be addressed as soon as possible, and that the project was consistent with the PUC GWA goal of reducing non-revenue water loss. So this is exactly the kind of project that the PUC has been looking for to deal with these long-standing water issues. For all of those reasons, I think change order number 2 is consistent with the project. I did submit a copy of there's not an actual change order yet. I guess that's awaiting PUC approval, but basically the proposal of Giant Construction was accepted by GWA for the $558,000 and approved by Twinius Camacho and Associates. So for all of those reasons, I believe that the Commission should approve change order number 2. The authorization now would be up to a total amount of $2,520,173. That would be the total. And again, as far as we get into the contingency issues, but any contingency they would have had before was used. So the way I'm viewing this, the only contingency would apply to change order.
Thank you, Fred. Miguel, do you have any comments regarding this project?
So, just to add to Mr. Hareki's comments about the number of homes served, there are 24 homes currently served that would benefit from this project, but they're based on the GIS mapping that I've looked at, potentially an additional 14 lots that are currently undeveloped could be served by this, which would not be able to be served given the current small diameter galvanized piping that is running down this road. So it would resolve that issue. It would eliminate galvanized piping, which is another source of leaks and losses within our distribution system, and for which we have a specific program established under our 20-year master plan to address these galvanized piping issues. So it would also be in line with the intent of that project. It will provide additional fire hydrants that currently do not exist on Tyson Road. So if there are several benefits to this, to implementing this. And the contractor that is conducting the work was the low bidder for this project. He's done other water line and sewer line projects for us, and his costs are fairly reasonable. If we were to bid this out, there would be likely much more expensive than this, given that we would have to have another contractor mobilized, and there would be those types of costs that are avoided by doing it now under the existing contract.
How long, so these individual homeowners, they were stringing 1-inch lines themselves from the location where the meters were and running it down the road?
Some of them were old GWA or PUAG galvanized lines that go partially down the road and might serve multiple customers, but there are multiple smaller diameter galvanized pipes that serve these homes.
Yeah, it seems,
And a lot of the meters are far away from the homes, and part of the project is relocating them to
kind of chaotic.
We're having to clean up other issues like that in other areas. So eventually this type of work will have to be done. There's an opportunity for us to do it now by including it with this project.
Victor, you had started to ask this question, but if I could, why was Tyson Road originally excluded when it's part of, Fred had described it was originally part of the Kenyatta Loop thing? Was it by oversight or by design?
The main goal of the original design project was to eliminate all of the 6-inch ACP, and it didn't necessarily focus on the service laterals. It wasn't until we got into the permitting stage that our operations folks let the engineers know that we also have issues with the small diameter lateral lines, and they requested that we put it into the project if we could solve that problem now.
So originally it wasn't part of.
Was not part of the design.
Not part of, okay, so it was by design, not by oversight.
Correct.
Miguel, does the ACP stay in the ground?
Yes.
It's crushed?
It stays in the ground. It's going to be abandoned in place in this instance, yes.
Do you put the new PVC pipe in the same trench or do
No.
you do one?
No,
New one?
new trench.
Yeah. Okay.
That's gonna be a lucky 24 holes.
Yeah, they would have to pay for anything, to have it all upgraded.
Well, but
Eventually,
but
the whole island's gonna need projects.
I know, the 1-inch pipes is not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, Teresa?
Yes.
Rojas? Okay.
Company Commissioners, good evening. Teresa Rojas, GWA Council.
Yeah, well, welcome to the PUC. This is
Nice to meet you
GWA's
all.
new council now, so I wanted to just introduce you to everybody.
No more, grant.
Kelly.
Kelly, what's happening?
Teresa's taking Kelly's role.
That's
Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
So on this petition, I just wanted to point out to the commissioners, in our file petition exhibit 810 and exhibit 811, we can do a better job next time about, kind of coloring those page numbers. But it shows an illustration of the area, so you will see that, the Costa Pinado Loop is actually the green line, and Tyson Road is the red line. So you can see that Tyson Road is right off of Costa Pinado Loop, and within this area. So, even you know, in black and white, not part of the original scope, it's very clear that is distinctly within the area. So, and then you can see all the homes, General Manager just mentioned that it is 24 homes that will be affected, with this, project. Administration, and then you can see all the homes in that area who benefited from the project of course overall.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.
In that area and was.
We have any motion? Here's a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pedro? Pedro's the next.
You don't wanna help those 24 people?
You're not a great
Right now,
charity.
we're gonna spend $25,000 per office.
It's in front of the meter.
Because I keep improving the system, like we seem to have, you know, you're gonna repair the system, repair it. But for me, people not knowing about a line on canal, like especially Tyson Road, it's right there.
No, they're.
By
No,
design.
I understand, but you got all these
They're not gonna use
engineers
the
and all these
same
people looking at this, and for $500,000.
Okay.
That's my.
Thank you, GWA, and welcome aboard, Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Take care.
Next item, administrative matters, PUC financials. Doris, are you gonna, or,
I'll start,
Okay.
Ken. The original, financials that were in your binder, hopefully, ones that, all the other accounts pretty much have been reconciled. The accounts payable at 99,000, reflects, a receivable from GWA of 122,000. So Lutz still needs to kind of work on that, and then that carried over into October, when the accounts payable balance shows a negative, meaning it's a credit, but it's showing as a debit of $500,000. So there's still some reconciliations that need to be done. The financials are for your information at this point. I'm not yet ready to finalize to bless it. We've done 90% of the reconciliation, 90 to 95%. It's always that last one that takes the longest to chew off. And if you were to look at the financials on the income statement on page, we have unreconciled differences, reconciliation discrepancies of about 34,000. That's how much all the cleanup has cost us. The biggest being the accounts receivable of reimbursable costs. That went from 36,000 last year to down to 1,800. So that's the biggest item in the in our reconciliation differences. And as I mentioned earlier, all of the cleanup we did for the bank accounts, they look good in October. I've signed up on the October reconciliation, so I'm happy with that. It's just this accounts payable seems to be causing Lou some challenges. I'm pretty confident we'll finish it off, and then we can bless it officially. Yes. Lou, you want to add?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Lou, thank you for all your efforts in doing the financials.
No problem.
Do we correct the issue that you thought was occurring with the application? Remember you said that there was like a glitch or something in the program that we were
Yes,
using?
that is, yeah, we had rectified that problem already, yeah. So we're actually just working on trying to figure out why is the accounts payable that high. So
Yeah.
that's something that
This
I'm
could be
trying to look at, going backwards a little bit, just to make sure that, we can bring in.
We actually don't have any accounts payable.
Yeah, we don't owe GWA
Right.
120,000.
No, we don't owe that.
But yet the system is saying we
The
do.
system is saying it, when I generate reports, it says that, but I don't think
That's
it's
right. So, look, here's what has happened. The system has been set up pretty good, a lot of things are recurring, and then, there were, in the beginning, that was new was the payroll, we got all of that fixed up. But it's that the accounts receivable and account payable from the prior year is still not quite. And then it multiplied for whatever reason in October, because I think she originally had the October financials, and I said, no, take that back, because there's no way we owe somebody $500,000. That's what it was showing.
You got it down to 99,000?
No, in October, it jumped the opposite. It went the other direction.
Growing.
So that's why we're still, and I'm pretty confident, every time I talk to her, she's, when we were off the number, Lou knows what's going on. It's just trying to make the system work.
It's just QuickBooks, right?
Yeah, it is, but see, the way things were originally set up, because this is not a complicated thing, you only have,
The commission's not complicated,
yeah.
exactly.
It's just the way the system has set up seems more complicated than it needs to be.
Right.
Chart of accounts.
No, everything is on an auto. What we call recurring journal entry.
Right.
Every time she records an expense, it automatically goes to accounts payable, as opposed to going, if we didn't accrue debit expense, credit cash.
Right.
It goes through debit, expense, credit, account payable, when we pay the check, debit, account payable, credit, cash.
Yeah.
So it's,
Right, versus just taking the check and putting it under the expense.
exactly.
That's
See,
true.
I thought that was the way, and I said, why are you accruing every month? That's the, then I found out it was already in the system, I didn't wanna touch it,
Yeah.
I just know that it's not there, that shouldn't be the number.
Yes.
Right, especially for a payable. So that's probably what's happening, is all it's been kept going as a payable, but then also paying it off by a check.
Yes.
So it's never wiped out from the
Yeah.
payable side.
So, like, for example, the balance as of September 30th, 99,000 in accounts payable. Now, while that may look good, as they say, the devil's in the details, and according to this, we owe GWA $122,000.
We don't.
And we really don't.
We don't.
So that's why it has to be
Yeah.
fixed.
But why would GWA be, because this is not from, this as a vendor, because we're paying our water bill, or because, why were they even payable to begin with?
That's just actually how the system.
Was it just the water bill?
It's
or-
not a water bill, it's actually.
I know, so it's like,
Yeah,
why
it's only
would
for
they be a
fees.
payable, or
Yeah.
they're a
It's
It's
customer?
the regulatory fees when they pay it.
Yeah, that's them, they're not a, yeah, they're our customer.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are.
They're not our,
Be a receiver.
they're not a vendor,
Right.
so there should be no payable.
See, right now, as of September 30th, the receivable from GWA is 95,000, okay? Which is probably from past,
That sounds
regulatory
like an
fees.
annual.
But the payable is saying we owe them another 100, we owe them, or they owe us.
Right.
They
I'm
owe
sorry,
us.
they owe us, cause it's a
Right,
debit,
they owe
and a
us.
credit. They owe us another 122,000.
In the payables? That's
In
what
the
they're showing?
payables.
Oh, they showed us the credit, okay.
Yeah.
But they're actually all paid out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So,
this
yeah,
is-
so they're showing us a payable, but they're also showing us a receivable about the same amount at 95. Shouldn't those two wipe each other out?
They can, that's something that.
That's what
They
you're
might
raising.
be, yeah, that's what we're trying to.
Yes, that's what
That's what
we're.
we're
Because
trying to
that's
do.
the credit of debt right there, which is balanced
Yes,
out.
yes.
Because they don't owe us anything.
Yeah.
They don't owe us anything.
As far as we know. So, like I said, we're 90% done, it's just when I saw, I said, oh, wow, no way.
Merry Christmas.
That's right. So the
We're getting there.
The receivables
We're,
are a little
you know, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Move to adjourn. Second? All in favor?
Well, Merry
Pedro, are you
Christmas,
ready?
everybody, and we'll see you
Also-
all next year.
So,
Merry
did
Christmas.
we, Pedro wasn't there, does he know that we're not meeting on the 23rd?
Yeah, we're not gonna have a meeting on the 23rd. GWA rate case is being extended.
Yeah, it's being extended.
So, we don't want to disturb you during your Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve.
The eve of the
Christmas
eve.
Eve, yeah. Thank God.